we had a mum come along, daughter was struggling, she has autism. As a child in South China, in the mountains where her village was, planes used to fly past and drop tracts about Jesus. So this mum prayed to Jesus, not knowing who Jesus was at different points in her life. 30 odd years later, she's walked into this church building because of Growing Hope, and she has found Jesus.
Welcome, everybody. This is Simon Gilbo with Inspired. So good to be back to another fantastic week of encouragement and hearing wonderful stories. Listen, if you're new to us, I think we're all just had enough of being relentlessly bombarded in the media by stuff that makes us more anxious and depressed and cynical and what we need is dollops of good news. And I've got no doubt this week you're going to be super encouraged and stirred because we've got with us the wonderful Naomi Fox. Welcome, Naomi.
Thank you so much, Simon. Such a joy to be here.
Yeah, brilliant. So I was recently on Naomi's podcast, but we go back, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years. Naomi was on staff with New Wine, involved in accessibility and additional needs for folks. Her husband, Chris Fox, is a good buddy. He's the vicar of St. Barnabas, Cambridge. I was preaching there last year with them. And Naomi, or Dr. Naomi, if you like, is a children's occupational therapist by background. She's also the founder of a superb organisation, which you're going to be hearing all about, called Growing Hope. So she's founder and CEO now. She's a founder. She's handed over that CEO role. It was established in about, 2017, and essentially provides all sorts of services, therapy services, be it occupational therapy, speech and language, music therapy, to children and young people with additional needs. Anyway, I think that's enough in terms of the introduction, Naomi. I just want to set you off to tell your story. Don't know much about your childhood background. Who are you?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the intro. Very kind. There's a story that I have I'd love to start with, actually. Comes from New Wine with a little girl that I met, and we'll call her Abby. And I was about 14 at the time. Abby couldn't walk, she couldn't talk, she couldn't eat by herself. She often had her eyes closed, and yet she carried the most incredible sense of God's peace and God's presence with her wherever she went. And she really sadly died. Abby died actually at age 14. And I went to her funeral, and at her funeral, person after person after person got up and they said, I know more of God because I got to spend time with Abby.
Yes.
And for me, when we read in Ephesians 3 about God's love that surpasses all knowledge, that we may be filled with the fullness of God, that little phrase, surpassing knowledge, like it's not just about what we know or what we can communicate to other people. Our relationship with God is so much bigger than that. And when I work and support and come alongside and learn from all of these incredible individuals who have various additional needs, I just feel like that is such a picture of kingdom and of what it looks like to see the world with God's eyes. And I think for me, even at that young stage when I was a teenager myself, and as I grew up, just wanting everybody to be seen, or trying to see people in a way that challenged my own judgments and my own expectations. I had a little boy once who used a wheelchair, and I took a piece of paper from him and started to write his name because I had assumed that he couldn't write his name because he used a wheelchair. And he looked me in the eye and he said, I can write my own name. And in that moment, I felt ashamed. I was young at the time, 13 or so, but it really challenged me again to be like, oh, I'm seeing things from the wrong perspective here. And there's been loads of things in my life that have led me to the point of starting Growing Hope and starting the charity. I think I became an occupational therapist because I really wanted to help children and young people to be able to have that fullness of life and experience. And as an OT and as a student OT, I spent time in Thailand. I went and gave one of my summers up to spend time there, and I absolutely loved it. And while I was in Thailand, I saw the local church there, being hands and feet, going to local communities in really remote villages. They sent medical teams up there. They offered to pray for everyone who came to this clinic. They actually took me around different houses in the village to see all these children who had additional needs. And there was just this moment of them being able to share hope in Jesus and doing that openly as part of the healthcare they were providing, which made me think, that's interesting. Why, healthcare is so different in the UK. Why are we not doing that? And then, I qualified. I spent time again in India, doing quite similar things, but again, working with a Christian organisation there who were not ashamed to share their faith, to pray for families, and saw transformational impact because they were bringing therapy and Jesus into what they were doing. And at that point, I was working for a private practice in London, and I was seeing a family who had bailiffs knocking on their door and still chose to come and pay for private therapy. And that baffled me. We know now that 1 in 5 children in the education system have additional needs. So there's a pretty intense level of need out there. And we know that families are often waiting 2-3 years plus for any kind of support. So all of that kind of culminated in, okay, what does it look like for me to give my life in a way that actually supports these children? And I was at KXC at the time, and I think Pete Hughes was talking about what's in your hands, like what's God given you and what is he asking you to do. And I had this picture just during worship one Sunday of families walking into this space, of burdens dropping off them, of children being able to do small things that made a difference, like all under Jesus's love and Jesus's forgiveness. And I went to Pete and I said, Pete, I've got to do something about this. Like, we're the church, we can step in the gap. We need to do it. So here we are. We set up Growing Hope, providing this free therapy for children and young people with additional needs in partnership with churches all across the UK.
Wonderful. And now you've got 10 charities across the UK doing it. That's 8 years on. I'm intrigued in terms of, things that you want to be overtly Christian, but often that jeopardizes funding access, doesn't it? But what happened when you started offering prayer and inviting people to church?
Yeah, I mean, one of the first families that I saw in clinic, I said, one of the things we do is I'd love to pray for you, but also I'd love you to come to church on Sunday. I'm there on a Sunday. I'm enabling it to be more accessible. This was to a mum who had a non-verbal little boy with autism who had quite a lot of behaviour needs, and, life was quite challenging for them. And she went, "What? We can come to church?" I was like, of course, yeah, absolutely, you can come to church. Come and be a part of church. And, it wasn't a smooth, plain sailing journey, but they were able to come to church. She has 4 children, and they were able to come to church as a family. They found a place where they felt at home. They found hope in the midst of a lot of challenge, and there's been different ups and downs for them, but we were able to, as a church, invite them to a weekend that we did, and there was real transformation for them as a family. And I think when we offer prayer, when we get to share Jesus as part of what we're doing, and there's no pressure for people to pray, so we make it really clear. We're not kind of coercing people into, you have to pray if you come to a Growing Hope clinic, but we just share that we believe that Jesus brings hope. We'd love to pray if you'd like to, no pressure if you don't want to. Is there anything that you can pray about? And, around 80% of families that we see say yes to prayer, and it is the biggest privilege that I feel I have, to get to speak hope and value and love and life over the families that we see. And the impact of that is just so big, and we don't often know. I think there are seeds planted in those moments. I've had parents call me. I had a parent call me 2 years on from therapy, who was like, "Naomi, I've just got to speak to you." And it was an amazing God instance, because it was a Saturday. I wouldn't normally have my work phone on, but I was helping at a church weekend thing, and I had my work phone on. She was like, "I just need to speak to you. I've just seen this thing happen, and I'd really love you to pray about it." And I thought, wow, that's amazing. Obviously I want her to know she can pray for herself as well, but the fact that she knows that we believe that Jesus brings hope and he can bring hope in any situation, and she chose to connect with us in that moment, I think was amazing.
So I know what it's like to pioneer and found something, and the finances can be incredibly worrying when you've got bills to pay. And as I said earlier, you've grown it to 10 charities across the UK now. Give us some of those. I love those faith stories, faith building stories of unbelievable provision and breakthrough when you really are back to the wall. Yeah.
Goodness me, have there been some of those times starting an organisation. I think right at the very beginning of Growing Hope, I'd really felt strongly that God was asking me to do this, that it was something that I needed to throw myself into, and so that's what I did. And I had this group of trustees who were brilliant, but who were like, Naomi, we've got to got to make sure that we've got the money that we need to pay you to be able to keep going with the charity and do what it is that we need to do. And I think there was a moment just before Christmas 2018. We'd been running for 8 months or so as a charity, and we were running out of money. We were below the reserves level we needed. I knew, or I'd been praying for a grant to come through, and I was relatively confident that God would enable that grant to come through, but I didn't know for sure. And I remember having these conversations with my trustees where they were going, well, you know, you're going to have to take a cut in salary. You're going to have to not be paid this month. I'm not sure what we're going to do. And I was kind of standing there like, no, I know this money is going to come in time. It's going to be okay. Whilst also on my knees a bit like, Jesus, please let this be okay, because I don't know how we're going to grow things and enable it to happen. And that amazingly, this £10,000 came in just at the right time. I was able to be paid, and that was right at the beginning before we had more staff. Now, fast forward several years, we get to 2023, it would have been, and we were in the middle of, you know, lots of financial challenge. There's a lot of money to raise now at this point, and it got to, for various circumstances that I won't go into, we got to a point where I'd just been on a bit of a sabbatical. I come back at the end of the summer holidays to find that we needed 100k basically before the end of the year or just a bit after. And that was a bit of a challenging moment, another like on my knees moment of like, oh goodness me, now it's not just my salary that wouldn't be paid if we can't pay people. This is actually a big deal. Like, I've got lots of staff. I don't want them to lose their jobs. And we're getting to share this hope with so many families. Like, this is what God's calling us to do. Surely there is going to be a way forwards in this moment. And I remember talking to Chris, my husband, about it. We'd, at the time, and he said, you know what? I really feel like God's going to give you 100k. And I thought, well, okay. I mean, amazing. That would be great if God gives us 100k. But Chris, like, I haven't put an application in. I don't know where that 100k is going to come from. You know, there's not much time between now and the end of the year. I just don't know how we're going to do it. And we were like, okay, well, let's just pray. You know, that's what we can do. We can pray. We can ask the Lord for it. And we decided that we would pray and fast on this one day for this 100k to come in, and that God would provide miraculously, because at that point it felt like there were not very many other options for us to get the money that we needed. And I was praying and fasting that day, and you know, as were other people within the team. And I had this phone call, and it was an out of the blue phone call from somebody at Stewardship, a brilliant organization that connects givers, often anonymously, with charities or places that they can give to. But I had this conversation with this guy, and he said, oh, somebody wants to give you £14,500. And I was like, amazing, that's great. Thinking, oh, you know what? I've been praying for 100k today, but £14,500 is good. That's a great start. And then he continued and he said, and they'd like to give you £100,000 for next year. And I was like, whoa. I mean, no way. That's what I've been praying for. And then he said, and £100,000 for the year after, and £100,000 for the year after that. So, you know, £300,000 plus that £14,500.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible provision. And I was blown away. And, you know, I know that God is faithful, and I know he's been so faithful throughout this journey of growing hope. And there are so many moments where God has provided in miraculous ways like that. And I think one of our staff team had actually, a few weeks before, we'd been doing this exercise where we'd been praying for the immeasurably more. We'd been saying, okay, what God do you want to do that's immeasurably more? And what I didn't know at the time is one of my staff, who not many people knew the like exact figures we were needing or the conversations that I'd been having. One of my staff members at the time, like a few weeks before, had written on a post-it note, 100k donation. And when we shared the story of what God had done, she was like, I wrote that on my post-it note. And it's just amazing the way that God has done that so many times in this journey for us as an organisation.
I love it. You know, 1 Thessalonians 5:24, the one who calls you is faithful, but that definitely gets tested. And I just find those so edifying. I mean, I often preach on Genesis chapter 12, and Abram gets this nuts promise as a wrinkly old man, you know, and Sarah's barren, but he's going to be a blessing to all nations. As many as the stars are in the sky, so shall your offspring be. And he builds an altar to the Lord who had appeared to him. And I think sometimes, you know, be it journaling or celebrating, put it in the diary, just remembering at key moments where he's spoken. So for me, I remember my first day arriving in the most dangerous country in the world. This is 27, 28 years ago in Burundi. I'd had most of my money stolen. I found an internet cafe. I sent my first email ever of what maybe was 200,000 emails over the next 20 years in Burundi. My first email was, guys, I'm skinned. I need a computer. That was my email. I sent it off. And that morning, a mate of mine in London woke up and he prayed. He just sensed God saying, I feel like God's saying to me, I need to give my computer to someone. And he switched on his computer and got this message, saying, you know, from Central Africa, I need a computer. And from the get-go, and then a few days later, we go up country, and it's very dangerous rebel-held territory, breakdown 6 times in rebel-held territory. Missed one of the 2 days of outreach evangelism. I came back railing at God, saying, come on, Lord, give us a vehicle that works. And because it was a terrible, terrible vehicle. And a mate, actually someone I didn't even know, whose name was Phil, with mental health issues of his own, but he sent a check made for £5,000 for a vehicle. He didn't know we needed the vehicle, but he'd made that specifically. And it's like, my God will meet not all your wants. This is Philippians 4 verse 19. My God will meet all your needs according to the riches of his glory in Christ. And I've got stacked loads of those stories. There's just a couple, but it's so affirming because I know that you've been through tough times, and that is the journey of, it's sometimes lonely starting off an organization. But anyway, as you've grown it takes time. It takes good people to be a healthy organization. And your role now, you've moved on from being founder. You're not CEO. I got the chance to stay the night I was preaching in London recently, and stay the night with Vicky, your new CEO. Tell us about that journey of handover.
Yeah, it's been an amazing journey. And again, like, God's provision has been incredible. So Vicky first heard about a job with us. It wasn't the CEO job. She came in a very different role, you know, doing a leadership role, but overseeing our training and development. And she had heard about our job because she lived in London. She'd seen one of our clinics there, and through that clinic she just happened to come across this job, because at the time we weren't paying loads for job adverts. So it was quite a niche amount of people that saw it. And I remember the day, and I remember where I was sitting when she rang me up for the kind of pre-interview or pre-application chat to say, you know, I'm interested in this job. Can you tell me about it? And from that moment, I had this kind of sense in my spirit of, this is a good person. She's going to be great for us as an organisation. And I remember being blown away at her interview. She was brilliant, and she came on board as part of a charity. I really knew that she was somebody that I could run with and to start to lead with. And that was such a blessing. And so we had a couple of years of working together with her in this training and development role. And then when I got married to Chris, became pregnant, I knew that I would have to hand over the reins. And I knew without a doubt that Vicky was going to be the right person to step into that initially interim CEO role for us as an organisation. And I think what's amazing as part of that, and then the rest of the story is, she did a brilliant job. Like, I then have come back to work. I'm actually expecting another baby, which is very exciting. That means that I've had to transition, like, having to do life a bit differently because my family is getting busier. So she stepped into this CEO role. I've stepped into a founder role, which means that I'm still inputting into the charity. I'm leading when I'm around in a kind of slightly different way, and I'm able to focus on projects that I'm doing. But I think the thing that I'm blown away by is how God is just such a part of our personal stories. So, you know, I talked earlier about how as a child I'd always been interested in supporting children, young people, and enabling them to be a part of community. And a big part of life for me was also this desire to be a wife, to be a mum, to be able to have children. And it was a long old journey. You know, I'd been praying for that since I was 18, and I got married when I was 34. So it was a long time of praying and waiting and seeing what God might be doing, and you know, lots of up and downs along the way. But I think I look back at that journey now, and I just am so grateful for God's faithfulness. I don't know where Growing Hope would be, and you know, maybe it would still exist and there would be lots of things still happening, but I don't know what it would look like if I had done all those things earlier in life, because as an organisation, we weren't at this mature enough point, probably, for me to be able to totally let go of the reins. And the same, you know, Vicky had this incredible journey before, and now her kids are much older, and she, you know, they're teenagers, and she's able to step into this CEO role. And it just is an incredible kind of synergy of time in terms of what we're able to do and how we're both able to lead in this moment. And I think the relationship between Vicky and I and the way that we lead feels very God-given. Like, she's totally on the same page as me. I completely trust her, and I know that I can hand the reins over to her, you know, knowing we have a faithful God who goes ahead of us, but knowing that he has been part of the whole journey. And I think sometimes we don't often realize, do we, what God's been doing until the moments where we can look back and see what it is that he's been doing. But I'm so grateful for his faithfulness, and you know, the privilege I now have to be in the position I'm in, where I have a husband, I have children that I've prayed for such a long time, and yet I also have this incredible charity that I know that I'm called to be leading, and I get to be a part of both things.
Yeah. Wonderful. And so alongside all your responsibilities, you're vicar's wife. Was it meeting Chris, having Lily and Phoebe? Anything you want to share there? Or?
Well, yeah, I mean, just God has been in those moments of meeting him, like being able to then have Lily and Phoebe and be expecting this other little one is a joy. And being a part of church leadership life, which, you know, brings lots of joys and challenges. And I think, again, is another moment of, I love getting to be alongside Chris in the way that we lead St. Barnabas, and you know, encounter all the people here, and it's such a privilege to see God move in that way.
Hey folks, I think many of you know that I am actually British but also Burundian. I spent 20 years in Burundi, started a charity called Great Lakes Outreach. This podcast comes out on the auspices of Great Lakes Outreach. You know, we're currently the hungriest country in the world. That's according to the Global Hunger Index, alongside Yemen. And many people just eat one meal a day. Over half of children under the age of 5 are stunted by malnutrition. So that's basically 1 in 2 kids. Mind-blowing. So can you imagine the potential if we could grow enough food for everybody to eat properly? And I want you to imagine 2 fields side by side. They both got the same soil, same weather, but one has spindly shoulder height crops, where the other's got row upon row towering way above your head. It produces 7 times more food than the other crop. Well, is it possible? I've seen it for myself. It's called Foundations for Farming. It used to be called Farming God's Way. And it's basically a biblically inspired method which yields massive amounts of food from a small piece of land. It's already changing lots of lives in Burundi, where hunger is clearly a gigantic issue. Anyway, we've just released a stunning new film about it, and it's less than 2 minutes long. It explains how it works and how you could get involved. You know, many of you are giving 10, 20, whatever pounds or dollars a month already. This is the sort of thing the money goes to. So if you want to be involved, go to greatlakesoutreach.org/farming to see this gorgeous short film. And you could also find it on the YouTube channel. And if you want to get involved, I would love that. greatlakesoutreach.org/farming. Here's to changing the world. Now let's get back to the podcast. So you're an occupational therapist. I've never really understood what that is. So tell us what that means when you support families through Growing Hope.
Yeah, so occupational therapy is with children, is about looking at the things that children do every day. So it could be washing, dressing, eating, playing, writing, concentrating, seeing if there's anything they find difficult, why they might find it difficult, and how I can help make it easier. So when I started Growing Hope, I was like, this is amazing. Like, I get to be an OT and help children with real life things. And I also get to share this hope that Jesus brings. And when I started Growing Hope, I was the first OT, so I set up the first clinic in King's Cross at KXC, and I worked there and, you know, ran the charity at the same time, and have continued that. And then now I do very small amounts of OT as part of my job so that I can still keep my hand in, which I absolutely love. But one of the things that I find is just that there are amazing things that I see, and I think it's because we pray as well as because of the jobs that we get to do. But I have seen a young girl, she came to me, we'll call her Sophie. Sophie came to me when she was 12, and she came with her mum, and they came to clinic. She's got a diagnosis of ADHD and autism. She attends a kind of specialist provision type school, but she's quite an able young lady. And Sophie came with her mum, and her mum was like, do you know what? Life is so hard right now because we can't sleep. Like, no matter what I've tried, Sophie just won't go to bed. It takes her hours to get to sleep. She gets to sleep, and then, you know, sometimes she's waking up and it'll be an early start, and we just can't get it right. We've tried loads of things. We just don't know what to do. And the privilege for me in that moment as an occupational therapist is I got a kind of toolkit of things that I can be suggesting that might help her with her sleep. So I had this conversation in this session with Sophie saying, okay, well, here are some things we can try. We know that the more movement activities you do, the more regulated that's going to be for your body. We know that if we create a routine for you around sleep, that might help you to get to sleep more easily. Anyway, we talked about lots of things, and Sophie was so motivated to want to sleep as well. Like, she knew that it was causing challenges for her family, that she went away and created this routine for herself, put in practice lots of things that we were saying. And it doesn't normally happen like this. 2 weeks later, they came back to us, and the mum was like, I can't believe it. Like, we're sleeping. She started sleeping through the night. She's going to bed. Like, it's amazing. It's transformed what we're doing. And, you know, I was a bit surprised too, to be honest, that it changed so quickly for her. But we prayed about it as well. And I think that's the privilege of getting to be an occupational therapist, is that actually sometimes really small changes, like I had in that picture right at the beginning, really small changes can make quite a big difference to children and young people's lives. And it is actually life-changing to be able to have sleep, not just for child, Sophie, but to have sleep for her family makes such a big difference to their life. It makes me think about another little boy who I saw in clinic, and we'll call him Ahmed. Now, Ahmed was 3 when I saw him, and his family, he had very traumatic kind of background. He came with his mum. I'm not sure, I don't think dad was on the scene. Mum was living in a hostel, and she had other children at home as well. And Ahmed had quite significant challenges, but no diagnosis of anything specific. But he came into my session, and this was a quite unusual moment for me as an occupational therapist, because normally I've been doing my job for quite a long time. Like, normally when I see a child, I have a good idea of some activities I can do, some ways that I can keep them calm and engaged and help them and support them through the therapy sessions. Now, Ahmed was a bit different. He came in to a session, and this happened for about 4 sessions in a row. He came in, he would often cry, he would often scream, he would throw things, he would try and destroy things in the room. His mum would often end up becoming quite distressed herself, and would often say things like, he's going to be sick. And then he would be sick because, partly part of what she was speaking over him, but just the kind of situation was stressful. And I was there thinking, this is so surprising for me, because it is so different to my normal experience of how I'm able to support a family, you know, in this kind of situation. And for Ahmed, I was desperate to think of a way and to work with him in a way that enabled him to reconnect with his mum, and also to experience peace, because that was what I was praying, and that's what I knew God wanted to give them as a family. But it felt like their life was so chaotic and so out of control that the mum didn't know how to even start to help Ahmed hold that peace in that moment. And he was so used to that level of chaos that he couldn't find that rest. And, you know, he's only 3. He was only 3 at the time. And So I really went away, racked my brains, thought, okay, goodness me, what am I going to do in this situation? And I ended up, I rang her and I said, you know what, we're going to do something totally different next time. We moved to a smaller room. I took out loads of equipment. I had nothing in there that he could break. I made it really low key and I made it really quiet. Essentially, what I said to Mum is, we're not going to talk. We're not going to kind of bring anything into the space. We're going to follow Ahmed's lead and see what happens. And it's this incredible, beautiful therapeutic thing called intensive interaction, where essentially, and often it's used with individuals who have learning disabilities, but the idea is that you follow the lead of somebody who is playing or interacting in a space, and you start to kind of follow what they're doing, and through copying what they're doing, that enables moments of connection between you. So we were in this space and I started to do it with Ahmed, started to follow what he was doing, and it was amazing. Like, found that suddenly this little boy who couldn't find his peace was much more calm, was exploring, was able to engage. But the most beautiful moment for me was, I was doing it first. I'd got Mum to sit on the mat and kind of watch what was happening. The most beautiful moment for me was when I handed over to her. I said, okay, like, your turn. This is how you do it. Like, give it a go. And this mum was a mum who had been through a lot. Like, there was a lot of trauma in her history, and she, I think, needed a lot of support to have that confidence to be able to interact with him in that space. But she was able to do it. She started to follow his lead. And what happened in that moment was, there was this moment where they made eye contact. Ahmed, her son, did something, turned his head one way, and she followed him and turned it the other way. And I saw this moment of connection, and I thought, wow, that's it. And that is such a privilege to get to see, and makes such a difference for that little boy. And so I love the fact that I get to do that, and I get to do it in a space where I can bring Jesus into the conversation as well.
Wonderful. All you occupational therapists out there, we bless you in what you do. And other therapists as well. Everyone who's plenty of different skill sets that complement each other. I mean, you've got a whole team, haven't you? Give us some more stories of, impact on families, that lovely transformation takes place.
Yeah, so there's a story that I've heard recently. So this isn't a story from me as an occupational therapist, but it's from someone else in one of our clinics. So she had a girl come along who was 7. She was one of 4, so all the children in this family have some kind of neurodiversity, whether that's autism or ADHD. So this mum had referred all her children to the clinic. They've not all been seen yet, but this was the first child who was being seen. This little girl, we'll call her Chloe. Chloe had high levels of anxiety. She wasn't able to leave Mum very often. She wasn't dressing herself. She was very distressed often, which was causing a lot of challenge in the family. She would get into school, but it was very hard. Like, it was a kind of battle every day to get her to school, to get her through the gates. And what they found was, for Chloe, they started to do occupational therapy. They prayed, they asked Jesus to be with them in the moment, and literally 2-3 weeks in, there was this incredible transformation in this family. And some of it was around the regulation strategies and the practical strategies that were happening, but also I think a lot of it was probably to do with the prayer as well. But Chloe went from this girl who had such high levels of anxiety that you had to fight her to get her dressed every morning, that Mum was trying to manage her and her other children all at the same time, to actually being able to dress herself independently. She started just walking into school by herself without Mum needing to kind of coax her through the doors. And there was this amazing transformation. And then it had this ripple effect for all of those 4 children, even though they hadn't all been seen yet within the therapy session. And they had a sibling who also was seen within the clinic by another occupational therapist. And the transformation for him, they did some work around some of his physical and developmental stuff that was really helpful and made quite a difference for him. But he started having less nightmares. He started smiling more. And for them as a family, they used to just be stuck at home. It's so often the case for children and young people with additional needs, where parents and carers come to me and they say, do you know what? We never go out. We don't go out because we can't. Like, life is so challenging. We're so isolated. we don't have enough hands to support our children when we're out and about. People look at us. We, end up feeling this level of shame. Our child might have a meltdown, and then we've got to support them and get them home. So do you know what? It's easier for us to just be shut away. And I think I see constantly throughout the biblical narrative, Jesus is constantly and continually drawing people from the edges, or who are perceived as on the edges, right into the heart of community. And I love that we get to do that as Growing Hope. Like we work with these individuals who are perceived as on the edge, or who, for many, many societal reasons are often pushed to the edge and are so isolated. And we get to say, you have a part to play, you belong. We want you to know that you are seen, heard, and you belong. And for this family, they often couldn't go out into the community. It was super challenging. And now they can. They've been able to go out more because of these small changes, again, like small things that have made a transformative difference to them as a family, so that they can start to re-access community, to experience that hope of being able to connect with other people, and to know that they can, get through life, do the day-to-day without having that kind of pressure of anxiety weighing down on them.
Naomi, it's just wonderful. Having given a shout out to occupational therapists and other therapists, I want to give a shout out to all you parents out there that have got children with additional needs, because what a challenging gig. And, when you talk about celebrating a child being able to put their clothes on or walk to school by themselves. And I mean, I've got 3 kids, and I thank the Lord that they haven't got those additional needs. But you guys, your obedience is heroic in a very different way. It's unseen, or if it's seen, maybe it's seen because people are annoyed because your kid's having a meltdown, But I just want to say all strength to you, and we cheer you on. Just keep going, and the Lord is with you in it all. Just bless you. I mean, I find it very, very moving. Prayer. You're a woman of prayer. The movement DNA is based in prayer, and obviously we believe that prayer impacts families. So what have you seen God do through prayer?
Yeah, prayer has such a big impact. And I mean, I could tell you hundreds of stories of where we've seen children come to sessions, we've prayed for something, they come back and they say, I can't believe they can do this. And we're like, wow, we prayed about that. It's amazing to see that happen. And also this privilege of, like I was saying earlier, about being able to speak hope and value over the children, young people and parents that I see. Yeah. Often you were just cheering on the parents. Often I see parents who, for many reasons, have lost hope, who don't even see themselves as themselves anymore, who are just seeing themselves as Fred's mum, and are having to fight every day to keep Fred going, to keep themselves going, to get him to school, to manage the appointments, and to be able to step into a room and say, hi, Kathy, Fred's mum, like, how are you? How are you doing today? What's been going on? Is there anything I can pray about? And these parents often are so blown away. The number of parents who say to me, I can't believe you've asked me how I'm doing. And I think, I mean, what do you mean you can't believe I'm asked you how you're doing? Like, surely there are other people who are doing that in your life for you. But I think often it is just so isolating that parents don't have that space. And the number of times I've sat with parents as they've cried, I've walked with families who have been journeying through all sorts of other things as well as their children's needs, when they've got siblings with cancer, or parents who are dying themselves, or, and they bring that life to us at Growing Hope, because they know that we create this safe place where they can trust us, and they know that we can invite God into the space. And so often it's just such a privilege to be able to be with families and pray in those moments. I think one of the stories that stands out to me is quite a recent one. So there was a young girl who came to one of our clinics, and she'd had a glioma tumour. So because of that, she had right-sided weakness and physical needs. So she had some foot drop where it was hard for her to lift her foot off the floor. It had impacted her vision on her right side. And that was really distressing for her. She was finding it really hard that she couldn't see properly with one side of her body. And that was something they prayed for. So every session that she came to, she'd be like, I really want to be able to see better. I really want to be able to just use my eye more. And a few sessions in, I'm not actually sure exactly how many sessions in, but a few sessions in, this family came to the therapist and they said, do you know what? Like, I can see more. Like, I've got more of my vision back in my right eye. And they'd been to the hospital the day before and had a test, and the doctors had said, weirdly, you've got more vision in your right eye, and it's not completely healed. It's like almost there. But this family, and the therapist said to them, did you tell them we've been praying? And they were like, yeah, we did. This family have experienced this miraculous healing of this little girl's eye, and she's now able to see more from her right eye because of God. Like, Jesus has just healed some of her vision, and that is absolutely amazing. And it blows me away that we get to see all these families and invite Jesus in a moment that they're struggling.
Yeah. You are the fragrance of Christ. We are meant to be the fragrance of Christ in any and every situation. And it's nice when we can point people to Jesus. And it's also the most glorious thing when people actually come to Jesus for themselves and get plugged into community. So give us some stories there. I think I was preaching in Broccoli a few years ago, and you got this Chinese woman there. Go on.
Yeah, incredible stories. So in our clinic in South London, we had a mum come along with her daughter. The mum was from southern China, and the mum's daughter was struggling. She has autism. She wasn't attending school. She found it really hard to go out in public. She had quite high levels of anxiety, and she came along to clinic, and the clinic talked to the clinic manager and was like, oh, what building is this? And so our clinic manager said to her, this is a church. And this mum was like, oh, what's a church? And the clinic manager said, well, a church is where we worship Jesus. And she was like, okay, who's Jesus? And they had this amazing story about a conversation about who is Jesus. What does that mean? And the clinic manager was like, well, do you know what? Why don't you come along on Sunday? Come along and find out who Jesus is. Come and see for yourself. And what's amazing is this mum came along on the Sunday. She was introduced to a couple of people in the church. Incredibly, they speak the same dialect of Chinese as this mum. They all spoke Cantonese. They connected with each other in the service. This mum encountered Jesus in a powerful way in worship, which I think really impacted her. And these couple of people who'd been sitting next to this mum said, you know what, like, let's stay connected. Like, they found out she lived really close to them, which again was amazing. They went for dim sum with her, and one of these ladies caught up with her again, and just there and then she was like, right, I want to follow Jesus. This is it. Like, I need to be a part of this. I need to have Jesus in my life. So she became a Christian, almost overnight. And what is incredible is that they've then connected into this small group with these two women in this community who speak Cantonese. And not just the mum is going, the daughter is also going along to this small group. So this daughter, who has not really left the house, doesn't want to access the community, can't access school, has specialist provision for schooling at home because it's too much for her to go into an environment with lots of people, is now going to this small group with people from church, meeting other neighbours, and it's not like a total transformation. There are still things she struggles with, but there's an amazing way that she is now able to interact with more people than she has done for a very, very long time. And what's even more incredible is that this mum, so as a child, she's lived in the UK for quite a while, but as a child in South China, in the mountains where her village was, they used to have these gospel drops. So planes used to fly past and drop tracts about Jesus into these villages. And her grandfather had this tract at home which talked about how Jesus is the one you should go to if you ever need help. Wow. So this mum, throughout her life, at different points, had known that she should go to Jesus if she needed help. So she'd prayed to Jesus, not knowing who Jesus was at different points in her life. And now, 30 odd years later, she's walked into this church building because of Growing Hope. She's been able to ask who Jesus is, and she has found Jesus and invited him into her life. And, what an amazing story of God's fingerprints over her life. Like, incredible.
Yeah. Got a goosebump moment there. It's such good news. I love it. So my cheeky dream, Naomi, out of this is that people will get excited and get in touch with you and say, we want to set up Growing Hope where we are. But across the UK, tell us more about that.
Yeah, so across the UK, we do lots of things. So we've obviously got our therapy clinics that provide free therapy for children and young people. And like you mentioned at the beginning, they provide occupational therapy, speech and language, music therapy, art therapy, counseling. They become these multidisciplinary things. And we're looking at growing that into a hub model where we can create lots of charities within a region of the UK. So there's loads of exciting things happening there in that space. But another really big part of what we do, we've talked about how parents, carers and siblings, we've talked about parents and carers, but also siblings are often really impacted by additional needs in a family. So the kind of research and stats around mental health are quite significant for parents and carers and siblings. There's a real increase in challenges to their mental health because of the pressure of having a child or young person with additional needs as part of a family. So as Growing Hope, we want to really bridge that gap. So one of the things we do is we grow hope for families where they've experienced isolation or rejection. And we've developed these two groups and courses. So we've got one called When Dreams Change, which is all about what happens when your hopes and dreams change because of your children's needs. So it's for parents and carers. We look at the grief cycle. We look at the story of Joseph, and it enables us to journey with parents through what it looks like to have potentially lost some of our dreams or for things to shift and then to start to dream again. We look at how do we fill up our own cups so we can give to our children, who's in our support network. So these parents get to connect with each other and to find hope in the midst of their circumstance. It's a 4-week video-based course. Anyone across the UK can train to be a facilitator. And what's amazing is that we've now trained facilitators. We've got over 50 facilitators across the country, often in local churches, running this course for parents and carers in their local communities, in their local schools, giving them this opportunity to process some of their experiences, but also to realize that they have value as an individual and that they have this space where they can actually find who they are themselves, to find a support network, to find out, okay, how do I look after myself in the midst of what I'm facing and the challenges that I'm seeing. And what's amazing that we've seen through that, we do this course often, but we did this course and we had 2 single mums who were on the course, both caring for children with pretty significant additional needs. And they met each other through the course. They didn't have many people in their support networks. And they actually connected so well that they ended up going on holiday together. And I love that. I love that these mums who otherwise would not have found each other and found their kind of crew and their champions who could support each other through the things that they were facing with their children. And then our siblings group is for brothers and sisters of children with additional needs. And again, like, we know that that can be really challenging for children and young people. And I've seen so many siblings who've come through the group who've shared both the ups and the downs of having their incredible siblings, but also sometimes the challenges of being the one who has to come second, who has to wait all the time because their parent is dealing with their brother or sister, or have to kind of face that embarrassment of what do they do when their brother or sister has a meltdown in public and they're there and they're experiencing that for themselves. So again, siblings group this one's a 7-week group, and we train facilitators across the country. So again, we've got lots of facilitators across the country who are running this group for brothers and sisters of children with additional needs. We use creative methods, so it's designed by myself as an OT, but also a children's counsellor. So we use puppets and lots of creative ways to enable the children to process some of their experience and also to be able to connect with each other and to build their resilience. And in that group, I remember distinctly going and running that group in a school, and we had a little girl she was probably around 7. She was very quiet. She didn't really say very much in the group for the first 5 or so weeks. And we got to kind of week 5 and she had Elephant, her puppet. So they all learned to talk through their puppets, which is incredible to see if you've never seen it happen before. But she had her puppet Elephant, and she was like, oh, Elephant has a story. We were like, great, Elephant, like, what's your story? And she was like, oh, Elephant was in the playground playing, and her little brother was next to her, and everyone was pointing and laughing, and she felt really embarrassed. And obviously that is a really hard story. Like, it's really challenging for that little girl to have had that experience. But what is amazing is that she felt in that moment she was safe enough to share that experience. She was processing some of that feeling of embarrassment, and she'd felt that she could connect with people in the group to be able to start to journey through that. And that's the power of that kind of thing, like being able to do those small therapeutic things that make a difference, not just to the child who has additional needs, but to the whole family. Again, we just see this incredible transformational impact because of being able to support everyone. And I think that's what God's call on us is always about. Like, we're not there just to see people in isolation. We are family, and we are God's family, and we get to be community together, and enabling everyone as part of that family to be seen, heard, and able to belong is a big part of what we do.
Yeah, so good. Hey folks, I hope you're enjoying the podcast. If you want to join our WhatsApp group, it's just one ping a week, but it's an easy way of forwarding on to other people. The details will be in the blurb and the show notes below. One thing I'd love to offer you is that my publishers have let me put on our daily devotional Choose Life online. So tens of thousands of people have enjoyed the book, but over the last few years we've had it online for free, and that could be a daily email or a weekly email. So for that, just go to chooselife.org.uk. Now, let's get back to the podcast. So, what do you think God's vision is for Growing Hope?
I think I look at Growing Hope, and when I first started it, I really felt God say, this is something that could change what healthcare looks like in the UK. Yeah. And it's a big vision. It's a big thought, but the church historically has always bridged a gap. So nearly all the monastic infirmaries, almshouses, and around 600 hospitals by the 14th century were all run by churches. And now, church is so far away from healthcare provision, and yet we have this incredible need for more healthcare provision. I talked earlier about 1 in 5 children have additional needs. Waiting lists are 2-3 years plus. Like, any therapist you talk to in the NHS says that they're stretched, and often there's no opportunity for intervention with children. So we've been very specific at Growing Hope about having an intervention model where we work with families for a short period of time, so parents are equipped and can carry on at home. Often what's happening in the NHS, like for lots of families, is they get seen for one session and handed on with some strategies, and that's it. They're gone and off a list. So I think there's an amazing opportunity for us as a Christian organisation, as the church, to bridge this gap and say, we believe that Jesus sees us differently. Like, God's call on us is to be a people who welcome everybody, where everyone can be seen, heard, and able to belong. And actually what that looks like is meeting people's needs in a really real, tangible way, where we have strategies that are going to help them with those small things that make a transformational difference, but also where we can pray and support them and bring Jesus into the conversation, because that is ultimately what makes the biggest difference. And I feel so privileged to have been able to be a part of this journey. That dream that I had, or that vision that I had in worship all those years ago, that was probably back in 2015, and then I started Growing Hope in 2017, first Clinic Hope in 2018. And when I had that picture, like, little did I know that I would be here, 8 years into the running of Growing Hope, and with these 10 charities across the UK, with us impacting hundreds of families every year. And I am blown away that God has blessed the vision in that way, and that it is very affirming to me, and like really reiterates for me that call that actually, like, this is what we should be doing. Like, we want to be a church that is a place that everyone can belong. And that's another big part of our work, is around generally around accessibility and enabling churches to know that they are places where everyone can belong, giving them small practical strategies that enable that to happen, because I want to see the church come alive in a way that includes, and not just includes, but celebrates individuals like Abby, who I talked about right at the start, who, you know, in the world's eyes probably can't offer very much, and yet offers this incredible sense of God's peace and God's presence. And that is amazing. Like, she is a part of the kingdom just as much as I'm a part of the kingdom, and she has gifts and skills to bring just as much as I have gifts and skills to bring. And that is my heart, is that we start to really like see the world through that perspective, see the world through God's perspective, not through our own kind of, you know, boxed, judgmental way of seeing things.
Yeah. Oh, listen, I'm going to give you a parting shot in a second, but folks, I want to promote growinghope.org.uk, so go and check it out there. I'm just wondering whether someone's listening thinking, maybe I'm going to play in there, I'm going to set up number 11, Growing Hope, around the country, wherever it may be, or number 12, whatever. And who knows what's come from this podcast, but I've seen it happen for other organisations, so why not dream big? And Naomi, as we close out, we cheer you and Chris along in Cambridge with your growing family, with number 3 on the way.
Thank you.
And but let me just put you on your sort of soapbox, if you like, and give us a parting shot of exhortation, challenge, whatever you want to. Go for it.
Yeah, so we would love to see you come and join in with us at Growing Hope and what we're doing. I think we want to see the church be a place that is more accessible. So like Simon said, you know, if you want to set up a clinic, amazing, come chat to us. But if you just care about your church being more accessible, you want to access our training or accessibility awards, or if you think actually When Dreams Change as Siblings, I could run that in my church, come and talk to us. We would love to have a conversation with you about that. If you're a parent or carer, we've got parent carer training. We run When Dreams Change online that you can also access if it's not running in your locality. But we want to be a place that supports everybody. So we would really love to hear from you. I think there was one more story that I've just realised that I didn't mention, and that was around, in terms of this vision for Growing Hope and what God's vision is. Right at the very beginning, I didn't know what to call Growing Hope. I was thinking about it, churning it around in my head, thinking I want to have a name that actually covers the fact that children are going to develop, but also that there is faith involved, and that it is about Jesus being the one who enables that hope, like enables us to grow, not just the therapy intervention. And I'd got to this point where I was thinking, maybe Growing Hope could be a good name, but I'd not really told anyone about the name. And I was at a Christian festival, I was at New Wine, and somebody was praying for me, and they had no idea what I was doing, and they prayed and they said, I've just got this picture of like green shoots growing up all across the country. I don't know if that means anything to you, but that is the picture that I have. And I was blown away, you know. I was like, I'm thinking of calling what I'm about to do Growing Hope. And I think for me, God's faithfulness in those moments of affirming what he's doing and affirming that actually, like, this is something that could grow hope all across the UK, I think, and beyond, is amazing. And I would encourage people to ask that question, you know, God, what's in my hands? What can I be doing with what I've already been given in a way that builds your kingdom and enables your hope to be seen in this country and beyond?
Wonderful. Ooh, praise the Lord. Folks, I think I can think of loads of people that would really benefit from hearing this. And as I say, often I think single parents are heroes to me. I think of Christy at our church. She's got 3 children, 2 precious twin girls who are rambunctious and beautiful and bring lots of joy and challenge. And I just, and there are others in church, you know, I can't mention everyone, but Christy, I salute you. And I just think of her, and I think of others who will be super encouraged by hearing this. So can you gossip this podcast, not just to people that have got kids with additional needs, but because I think all of us will benefit. But we are the church. And if you are getting annoyed at someone who's a bit loud in church, you know, to have a challenge to yourself on that one, because and put yourself in the shoes of that precious mum or dad who's really struggling to keep the show on the road, and let's come alongside them. Let's be the church. Sometimes we're waiting for other people to do the job, but God is sort of waiting for us to be involved. And, obviously, Naomi, this is your passion. You found your sweet spot. Pete Hughes, who's been on the podcast here a few months ago at King's Cross Church in London, he couldn't believe, could he, that this, not that you're random, but this random lady just walks up and says, I've got this vision. He said, go for it.
Yeah.
And some of you out there, God has sown seeds of dreams, and what could be if you take that first and that second step and the Lord opens the doors. So, Dr. Naomi Fox, we thank you. We cheer you on in Cambridge, and keep up the great work. And all you guys doing the Growing Hopes across the country, and more to come. Praise the Lord. God bless you. Keep up the great work. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks so much, Simon.
Wonderful. Okay, guys. Yeah, share the news. Give us a great review on Spotify and iTunes so the algorithm gets more people to hear good news. Next week, another fantastic guest. A very different story, very different journey. I love each and every one. In the meantime, God bless you. Have a great week, and toodaloo.